Have you ever wondered why we need to constantly be trying to fit in?
Or why we need to fit in without trying too hard.
This is because we as an individualistic society appreciate the uniqueness of everyone, but only to a certain extent.
Lines are drawn, and when they're crossed, this is when people experience dissonance. Dissonance is when we engage in a behavior that conflicts with the cognition, and thus the person experiences an unpleasant state of arousal.
We want to act and be one way, but social pressures are pulling us in a different and seemingly more acceptable direction.
There are many actors, such as family, peers, and media, that influence on how we behave and act according to our expected gender roles.
Let's take a look at some societal gender norms of conformity that are family related.
Family can have a major impact on what social pressures we listen to and how we choose to act on them. It has been found that parents with higher levels of education value conformity less than those who have attained a lower level of education. But it was also found that fathers value conformity more than mothers. This is because generally women have fewer options and fewer chances at the job market, and therefore teach their children, regardless of gender, to be independent and self-sufficient. Because of this fact, the male transgressor of traditional gender roles is seen as more dissimilar than females who transgress their traditional gender roles. This is because of the potential loss of status and privilege that may occur if males step outside heteronormative sexuality and traditional gender roles.
There are many other things that can affect how much you might listen to your family.
For example, if you are the younger sibling and your older brother or sister is being punished or scolded for not exhibiting a traditional gender role, then you are less likely to follow in their footsteps. Watching your sibling experience rejection from other family members will sometimes push you to hide the fact that you may be questioning your sexuality or do not wish to maintain the traditional gender role. Furthermore, this ties into the concept of normative influence, which is something that parents and family members can exert over the person who may not be conforming to the appropriate gender role. Normative influence is when the person in question fears the negative social consequences of their actions or behaviors. The child may fear rejection by their parents and therefore choose to conform in order to stay with the family and continue along the path that is most acceptable.
The family is also the perfect example of social impact theory. This is a theory in which we are more likely to listen to and value the opinion of those people who we are closer to, such as family members and very close friends. As young people, we value the opinion of our parents because we believe that they are looking out for our best interests and therefore their opinions are right. As we get older, we begin to develop our own opinions and tend to value less the opinion of our parents and more those of our close peers. This is the result of growing up, maturing, and defining ourselves in a way where our identity and self-expression harmonize together. At a young age, our largest influencer is our parents, but as we move into adolescence and adulthood, peers begin to have an overwhelming impact on how we think and act.
Male and female social groups will react differently when their members transgress their expected gender role.
For example, women are generally viewed less negatively in social groups when they transgress their gender roles as opposed to men. This is because they are changing in a higher direction by gaining status and privilege and are therefore viewed more positively. In contrast, men change in a lower direction by losing social status.
In other words, it is more acceptable for a female to cross the boundary into male-oriented jobs, while men are still continuously ostracized for choosing an assumed female job.
What is truly interesting is the extent to which peers can affect the behavior of other peers.
For example, most children during their interactions with other peers felt pressure to conform to gender norms. This is because children disapprove of peers who engage in gender atypical behavior and will often resist befriending them. Children who engage in gender normative behavior and commit to gender roles generally dislike and marginalize those who do not adhere to societal gender norms. On top of this, those peers that are found to be atypical in their behavior experience heightened levels of harassment because the response to atypical behavior is verbal and physical aggression by other normative peers.
So you can begin to see how those who exhibit atypical behavior will feel more pressure to conform to normative gender roles, and those who are targets of overt victimization will feel even more pressure to conform to societal gender norms.
Some peers will also conform and reject those who display atypical behavior because they fear themselves to be rejected.
This is known as public conformity, and it is when people conform in public because they don't want to seem disagreeable, even though, in reality, they may not condone the behavior illustrated by their gender-normative peers. Peers will also conform to those groups that appear attractive to them. The attractive group is a popular group that often appears to be constantly having fun and enjoying certain perks, but they are the ones who are harassing those who display atypical behavior.
Even if a peer does not agree with their behavior, they may go along with it because they want to experience the perks of being in a gang.
This is also where dissonance will occur, if it does occur, because the individual disagrees with the behavior but engages in it in order to achieve some goal, in this case, acceptance into the group. Something that intensifies this concept even more is when the group appears to be unanimous, because this is when the group is at its strongest.
Lastly, all of these factors affect adolescents more than any other age group because they're trying most to fit into a certain group and gain that group's acceptance.
Furthermore, let's transition to the media aspect of social influence of gender roles and conformity.
With the outburst of social media, it has now become a central part of the cultural environment of industrialized societies and has become part of the social environment of people of all ages. However, the socialization is especially strong in adolescence because this is a time where the most important aspects of socialization are taking place. In regards to identity-related aspects, we are talking about gender role learning and the development of one's own set of values and beliefs. We also need to understand that media differs from socializing agents such as family, school, and community in the way that adolescents have greater control over their media choices than they do over their socialization from these other sources. Because media is market-driven to a large extent, media providers are likely to provide adolescents whatever it is that they believe adolescents want to hear, within the limits imposed by other adult socializers, of course.
Therefore, adolescents will acquire or resist acquiring the behaviors and beliefs of their social world and culture that they live in.
The result is a substantial degree of self-socialization in the sense that adolescents may choose from a diverse range of media materials, the ones that best suit their individual preferences and personalities. In other words, adolescents use media towards an enhancement of their individuality, and sometimes to oppose the beliefs and values represented by adults. They also seek comfort in the security of finding others who like what they like, especially among their peers.
Through the social constructionism concept, adolescent boys and girls are socialized to believe and enact a variety of male-female specific attitudes and behaviors. Socialization is understood to come from multiple actors, including parents, peers, teachers, and new mainstream media, also mentioned before. In essence, socialization and societal pressure to conform to the culture's dominant definition of masculinity or femininity is ever-present, relentless, and inescapable. In men, masculinity through media can be depicted through a variety of ways: beer commercials, heavy metal music, television sitcoms, television media, comics, and advertising.
Through the media, it is important to highlight the contradictions in the construction of the notion of masculinity. Although the media may offer images of men which defy sexist stereotypes, they still uphold and promote the notorious dominant status of patriarchy.
It seems imperative, particularly for males, that an expansion of acceptable gender roles and gender role behavior be demonstrated and practiced in society as a whole.
This might entail a philosophical shift towards the expression of human characteristics rather than gender-based characteristics. There has been conjecture that even the progress made in our culture regarding gender stereotype reduction and the flexibility of gender roles will stall without expanding definitions of gender role behavior and the gender binary.
On the societal level, this might entail public role models such as media personalities.
Expressing behavior and values unconstrained by traditional gender role beliefs.
On a systemic level, this might mean revisiting the idea advanced by radical feminism that societal
and institutional inequalities must be recognized and eradicated in order to facilitate personal and interpersonal change. The idea that one's motivation to avoid prejudice has also been noted in the literature and can be both internally and externally driven. Motivation can occur from an internal sense of self that seeks to promote egalitarian attitudes, as well as from an external motivation to support egalitarian social norms. In some, advancing social norms that support same-sex oriented persons and lifestyles might provide motivation for individual change.
Conformity is a hard concept for individuals to understand and either accept or resist. Throughout our lives, we move away from family as our main influence onto peers and then onto media. And in turn, they all play an important role in how we come to define our values and beliefs. But conformity to certain gender role behaviors will always be expected. It becomes our responsibility to decide if we wish to deal with the consequences of nonconformity, silently disagree, or fully conform to these expected gender roles.